It is like the end of summer. I don't know how you can have
Can you believe it?
like man can say, nope, nope, it's over. The fun's over. It's done. Everybody fly home. Oh, good morning, my friend.
Good morning, sir.
He's Dewey Freeman. I'm Mark Sylvester. We are the Elder Council. It is Labor Day weekend 2023. For those researchers who are digging into the deep back catalog of the Elder Show, they'll go,
50 years from now.
Exactly. They'll be studying us to figure out why we were so amazing.
They'll be studying the fossils.
They'll be doing something.
That would be true.
It's interesting. As you know, my background in computer animation, and you've seen my office, I never throw anything away, which was true at my business. And I saved everything. Even when I left, I saved, several hundred boxes of memorabilia.
Really?
And all the business cards, all the T-shirts from trade shows, all the posters from movies that were done with our software that I'd had signed, all of the Christmas card from Steve Jobs, the tchotchkes that you get.
Mm-hmm.
See this behind me? So imagine me and 20 years in my company and just saving everything. And I put it all in a storage locker. And I would pay, a few $100 every month to store this stuff. And for instance, every summer, we would do a big collection of videotapes from our customers of their work. Then I would take hundreds of those videos and I would edit them into a 5 or 6 minute demo reel that we would show at our trade show, which was always in August, every summer. And here's the state of the art, right? What our customers had been doing. I never returned any of the videos. So I had that whole collection as well in storage. Wow. And long story made even a tiny bit longer. About 6 years ago, I get a letter from that same organization, SIGGRAPH, which is our professional trade association. Mm-hmm. And they said, listen, you guys aren't getting any younger. And those boxes that you have stashed in your garage, when you die, your wives are going to go, what's this? What's this box of shit? Throw it out. And instead of throwing it out, we'd like to have you send it to us.
Nice.
Because we want to capture the history of computer graphics, very specifically the history of computer graphics that evolved out of all of the work being done in Southern California. There was a very specific geographic thing. And I wrote back and I said, well, I have a few hundred boxes and a lot, and everybody knew me by reputation. We were one of the first companies. And so the archivist from the Charles Babbage Institute at the University of Minnesota, which is Charles Babbage, as we know, is the counting machine, flew out here with the head of SIGGRAPH and the guy who actually introduced me to computer graphics, those many years ago in 1984. And I remember swinging open the door to the locker, and it was just packed right all the way. There's maybe a little bit of walking room. And he, the eyes went like this. I said, let's just take a random box and go through it. Because he wanted to know, what am I getting? Like, what are we talking about? And it took us an hour to go through this one box because I was like, this is from this, and this is from that, and this is from this. And at the end of the hour, he was so excited. He's still a friend to this day. And UPS came out and they packed it all up and put it in a truck and sent it back. And then the beautiful part was this was in the fall. And his selling point to me of why I should give it to them and not the Smithsonian was he said the Smithsonian is still cataloging gifts from the 70s.
No kidding.
Your stuff won't be available to researchers for another 30 years, where if you give it to us, we'll make it available in the spring. That winter break, I started noticing tweets from a college student at the Charles Babbage Institute whose job was cataloging these over 2,000 items. And she would take pictures and hold stuff up and write, I don't know what the F this is, but it's really cool, and kind of described her job. Had no idea I was paying attention. And one of the things she held up was all of the lanyards from probably, I don't know, 100 trade shows or more. And she says, it was so cute. Just, I don't know what these are, but this is like art. And I wrote her and I said, that's $1 million worth of travel is what that is.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's
it was beautiful. But that's having these legacies and creating them so people can come and research the early days. So there I landed that plane, Mr. Freeman.
What legacy do you want to be able to leave? When you, in 35 years from now, are laying on your deathbed, what legacy in your heart, what will you be saying? I really am glad that I left this.
So the answer to that, by definition, is less than a sentence. And at this point, the answer is a book's worth. Meaning there are, I need to whittle that down. My first thing is because we played this game before, what do you want it to say on your tombstone? Right. And I would say one of them was he worked hard, but it wasn't really that. It was stay curious. And I think it would be something like that. But see, I think it was a different question because
that's a little different question.
It's a different question, I think, is what tracks do I want to have left?
Okay.
I think that's the different, right? And I think probably the one clearly my kids would be is the first answer, right? Is keeping the bloodline going, and grandkids, right? That was the legacy, is my grandkids. So that's the answer.
That I completely appreciate. I think is lovely. In addition to that, what legacy professionally do you want to leave?
I think professionally, the one that I tend to brush off, right? Because I just go, I don't think about it, or I guess the answer would be being one of the guys who brought computer animation to just ordinary artists like myself, right? Took it out of the research labs and made it accessible and changed how we make movies. So I mean, I could get extremely elaborate and still stay on the reservation, if you will. I mean, it was a very, very big deal, but it didn't feel like a big deal while we were doing it. It's only a big deal in the rearview mirror, and as you know, I don't have one.
if someone, you just spoke about hundreds of boxes, and if somebody like this particular student that was going through them, or had cataloged everything that you have put out in that realm, what legacy do you think someone else would say that you left?
Um, I I tend to wordsmith the crap out of stuff, but I think he gave, this is kind of the title of my TED Talk. He gave people the ability to see what they think.
Mm, that I love.
Whether it's a product designer who has an idea for a new way to craft a toothbrush, or it's a writer who has a view of a world that doesn't exist, or a director who wants to film a scenario that is not able to do in this world, and we need computers to do it, or it's a scientist who has an idea of what he thinks or she thinks is happening and has the data but doesn't have an image to show to someone else to prove what they think. So see what you think is probably, now that I think of it, it took me a long time to come up with that for my TED Talk. As that is it's as good as anything in terms of encapsulating how I approach the world. And it was through doing that again, someone would look in all of those boxes. As you were describing it, I was thinking, as far as direct work product of me, it's not like, hey, I wrote 500 books. There's the work product. These are all the things that I created. I was more of a catalyst to have things created, and it catalyzed both employees and customers and partners, and and being part of that thing that was happening in the early 80s and through the 80s, that turned into, today we can make films with computer generated effects on a fucking phone.
Do you give yourself adequate credit for what you did?
Probably not. Because it's not about me.
Well, I get that. And it's one of the big pieces among many things that I totally appreciate and love about you. And I totally get it when you say, yeah, it's not about me. And it really is on some levels about your leadership.
I would agree with that.
And your ability to help people, your ability to create, and your ability to help others create.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
yeah. And that's true to this day.
Yes. Yes. And and here's where I'm going with this, is there is a huge part of me that loves the idea of and I can't think of a better word than this, of having a very high level of humility that really loves that of people not going out and going, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this, and you should pay attention to me because of this, and all of those kind of things. And there's a lot of that in the world that's happening right now.
Yep.
I'm this, I'm that, and you're not this, and then a lot of that gets put out there in a way of people. One of the ways people are raising themselves up right now is by putting other people down.
Yeah, look at my life, how much better it is than yours.
Right. And you're a liar, or you're this or that, or you're stupid, or all of those kind of things. And that piece is, that piece creates a level of phoniness when people do that. When I hear someone doing that, I'm going, okay, you're pretty much a phony being right now, or you're being phony. The other part, though, of actually owning what we bring to the table, I think is really important. And part of the reason it's important is not to sell that, or not to say how wonderful we are. Like, I'm really wonderful because I created this, or I'm really wonderful because I have this theory, or I'm really wonderful. The purpose, I believe, is to allow people to see and experience a very high level of competency.
As you're saying that, I'm thinking about, instead of walking into a situation and saying, I'm wonderful, right? This is that person who walks in, I'm wonderful. Walk into the situation and be wonderful. Don't have to say it, just be it. And it gets me thinking about how I show up as a leader with other people, is that high level of confidence in my ability to be, and to be whatever is needed at the time, because I want to have people know, like, and trust me nearly immediately. Like, that's important. That's important to me, right? So I'm going to, whatever I need to do to be that, so that they can know, like, and trust me. So by coming in and saying, hey, I'm here, let's get this party started, rather than just be smart, be a good example. There was a community meeting this week in the evening of citizens who care about the Alcazar Theater, which happens to be where our improv troupe is housed, and what is the future of the Alcazar Theater need to look like. And we got split into groups, and there's a scribe and a spokesman, and you talk, and it was very facilitated. And I will tend to gravitate towards being the scribe, because I print nice and you can read what I write. But I also, if you have the pen, you get to write whatever you want. I've learned. And then if you're a spokesman, you can kind of take up all the oxygen in the room, right? And I've learned over time that my natural inclination is to do that. So I said, I'm just going to contribute my ideas on as we're talking, and I don't need to own the room. And yet, by the second go round, I was scribing And I was talking because it was clear that the ideas of what are at our table, I didn't feel would be represented to the entire group unless I stood up and represented them. And I didn't, it was just, I have confidence in my ability to speak on this like that and create a building statement for the organization on the fly.
Yeah.
You know,
Like immediately.
Right. Exactly. So it wasn't about showing up and saying, hey, I'll be the scribe because I can print nice, or I'll be the spokesman because I'm very good at that. It's just, no, just do that. and as we were driving home, Kimberly said, oh, you know that one guy who was wearing that t-shirt? I go, yeah. She says, he came up to me afterwards and says, I want to marry your husband.
Well, I don't know. Could be interesting.
So it's to your point of a high level of confidence, but without any braggadocio, or I didn't need to have a picture of me doing that to any of that stuff. In fact, I hadn't even thought about it until just now.
Is it just a high level of confidence, or is it a high level of competency?
It's conscious competency.
Yes.
It's conscious competency. And there's probably unconscious competency in that it was clear. I think I'm very good at seeing the gaps in stuff, and seeing the gap and going, oh, I'm not even thinking about it. Oh, well, it's clear if these things, if we could fix these gaps, that would make this next thing. And I just started writing it.
The whole picture. Yeah.
Yeah. So there was absolutely a bunch of unconscious competence going on as well.
So one of the pieces that I'm seeing is, and this is why I asked a question I asked you, is people having an incredibly high level of confidence and a much lower level of competency. And that the connection between confidence and competency are two they're not connected all the time. And the confidence has, in some ways, has to do with someone marketing themselves.
The confidence.
Mm-hmm.
So would you call that ego strength?
Confidence without competency?
No, not necessarily, but just on the confidence. If someone's confident, they may not there. It may be unconsciously incompetent, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that I would use the word ego with that. I would use, if somebody is confident without being competent, the word I would use is phony.
Is that the big hat, no cattle guy?
Yeah. Yeah. It's sort of the urban cowboy dude. Big hat.
A lot of swagger.
A lot of swagger, a lot of bling, Wranglers, cowboy boots.
As soon as you hand him the reins, he has something else to do.
Yeah, and they've never been around a horse.
Exactly.
And when we lead, when we have a legacy to leave, because and this is, and I'm sort of messing here, is legacy to me is leaving our competence for someone else to learn from. And that does not carry any level of confidence because we're no
Confidence is
longer around.
removed because the person's removed, right?
Yeah. It's like
But
that.
there's you're talking, I think, about artifacts of your competence.
So say what you mean by that, because that word would not be one that would come into my vocabulary.
So an artifact of your competence might be your writings, your thoughts, your teachings, your videos, books, something that allowed us to understand how you thought about things, how you led, what your mantras were, the things that what did leadership mean? If I wanted someone to understand how to be a good leader, I might write a book or have essays on leadership that are read well after my death. That would be a legacy, his thoughts on leadership. Or if I was a maker of things rather than a maker of ideas, my legacy, I've got a dear friend who's one of the top architects in Santa Barbara, and most of the buildings in the last 40 years were designed by him. And that's clearly a legacy. Those buildings will be around in 100 years. So his legacy is his craft of being able to see something that didn't exist and then to build it down to the little bolt that holds the molding on. He could go from big to small and small to big. That's his legacy. So I think of it as artifacts so that we could look
why
back.
would you call it an artifact?
An artifact is something that could be discovered. So an archaeologist might look and find my books and go, oh, there's an artifact. Here was something that was left behind, a track.
I like the word track better. And earlier, but you used another phrase.
Leaving tracks. That comes from Scott Mann, Lieutenant Colonel Green Beret. And his father is a naturalist. He was a forester. He was head of the forestry for the United States. Yeah, his TED talk was about I'm embarrassed to say I forget the name of a tree, but a tree that was once prevalent in the United States and is now in danger of not existing anymore. And his mission is to tell people about these trees. But he's a old school Southern gentleman, wonderful, wonderful man. But he raised his son to be aware of the tracks that he left for others. That's where that comes from.
So part of what we might want on two different levels is one, how to actually become competent in following tracks or in tracking. And the other might be becoming aware of what tracks we leave.
Good or bad, by the way.
Good or bad.
You and I have talked, just the bad hit me for a second about maybe the abusive father or the abusive spouse who rails on his wife, and the kids see that, and those are tracks that are left for those kids. And we talked about it taking 3 generations for those tracks to be faded out of memory.
Right. So part of what we might want to really work on becoming aware of as men, and I would make this bigger than men as people, but since our audience is primarily men, as men, is what tracks are we leaving? What tracks are both good and bad? Because if I look back, I go,
Like,
I,
can I hit the undo button?
yeah, there are a few undo buttons I'd really like to hit, the little
I
arrow.
said to someone once, I said, there's no undo button in life. You don't get to control Z your way out of this mess, dude.
Mm-hmm.
So to your point exactly, this hit me about probably 20 years ago, 15 to 20 years ago. It hit me that I was leaving tracks unconsciously, and that I became aware, oh, I'm leaving tracks, mostly because people would come up to me and say, remember when you told me, remember that time when and you said, yeah, kind of says, well, let me tell you what happened as a result of that.
Mm-hmm. Let me tell you
And
how that affected me.
exactly. And that was positive. They were very much wanting me to know that I had a positive impact on their life, and which made me feel good in the moment, but also created a sense and awareness in me. And I remember specifically when that happened, that I had the opportunity to make every moment memorable in my life.
Memorable, because I think, would it be, I actually have a story I'd like to share here in a minute. But would it be reasonable to say, make every moment memorable in the way that you would like it to be memorable?
I don't think I have a choice of that. I cannot control your memory of your interaction with me, other than to be as good and positive and loving and giving all the things that I can just be by controlling my state, which I am 100% in control of. I am in zero control of yours, other than it's going to, my state will absolutely have an impact on you. I believe that wholeheartedly. So if I can be happy and joyful and curious and interested and all those things that you know me to be, the chances are it's going to be really hard for you to stay in a bad mood when you're around me. Right?
That is 100% accurate. Well, part of what I'm thinking about here, Mark, is that, so here, this is true, a true story, and I was maybe 30-ish. I was visiting Ohio, and where I grew up. My mother is a teacher at the time, and I went it was spring. School was ending. It was the last week of school for everybody. And in fact, it was the actual last day of the school year. And I had visited my mother in her classroom. And then I went actually to another school, because the elementary school I went to was different than where my mother was teaching. And I was just wandering the halls, and I came across my kindergarten teacher. Her name is Mrs. Sowers, who I believe by now is probably no longer alive. And I walked into her room, and I was absolutely stunned that she remembered me. And again, I was 30-ish, so I was in kindergarten at
25 years. Yeah.
And it happened to be her very last day. We started chit-chatting, and she was packing everything up because that was her last day of teaching.
Retiring.
She was retiring. And I told her the impact that she had on me, I shared the impact that she had on me, which was my home situation was pretty tense at many times. And she made my, then kindergarten was half a day. And I would go in the morning. She made my day good. She made my day safe. And it was only like from 9 to 11:30 or something like that. It wasn't like, and I just shared how kind she was, and consistently kind, and how unconditionally loving she was, and how I would lay on my little blanket and we would do the 15 or 20-minute nap after we would color or whatever we were doing. And her eyes teared, and, we had just a beautiful moment with each other. And one of the things that she said was, I had absolutely no idea that I had that kind of impact on you or anybody else. And basically what I told her was that she did two things. She literally shifted my life at that point, and she allowed me to find a place, which was school, to be okay. I mean, she really set me up for the rest of my school career to be okay. And not that every teacher I had was as wonderful as she is, but she made it such a good place that it was a good place for me to go. And I'm in agreement with you on some levels that we really do not know how other people will affect us, or the depth of impact they may have. What we do know is if we come in a negative way, that we can pretty much count on that somebody will remember that. If we come in and if we're not conscious of how we come in, we can pretty much know that we will have a negative impact on somebody. We often don't know the level of positive impact we have on somebody.
And I would posit that it is equal in measure, positive or negative. It reminds me of, have you ever heard of the term of, you've heard of what a brand is, right? We know what a brand is, and that you can have a feeling about a brand. Like, what does a brand make you feel when I say, Apple or Mercedes or whatever? So I'm in the business of personal brands. I help people build a personal brand, right? What's the brand of this person? So if you extend that to what you just said, the brand is not what you say it is. It's what people say when you leave.
Yes, which is exactly what I'm talking about.
I thought so.
It's exactly what I'm talking about. It's like, what about when you leave? What about all of the nuanced pieces of it, and not only the brand itself, but how we present the brand, which oftentimes is ourselves that we're actually presenting.
No, exactly. Yes. And when it's negative, it's, when's that son of a bitch gonna leave?
Yes, exactly. Well,
and versus, can't you stay a little while longer?
Well, exactly. And there's two parts to it. One is the brand itself, and the other is how we present the brand.
100%.
Because what I've seen is, and experienced is, well, the brand's actually pretty good. I sort of am liking this idea, But how it's being presented is not, it's
Hmm.
like, I'm going
Give me
somewhere
an
else.
give me an example. I mean, I'm thinking of them. I'd love to hear yours.
Well, I'll tell you what, one of let me give the flip side example because um, actually it's Simon Sinek.
Huh?
The stuff he says is, I really like what he says, but how he says it and the contact in which he says it is, that's what sold me. I mean, that's what drew me in. The I'm trying to think of a brand of that I went, yeah, I like the brand, but don't like how it was presented. I actually, I sort of want to refrain from that because the people would know, and I don't want to be negative towards somebody.
Is it earlier in our conversation we talked about a lot of confidence, no competence, right? Big hat, no cattle, right? We talked about being a phony. We talked a lot about that. Um, the reverse is very, very competent, but not confident.
Yes.
So that's the person where I, oh my God, once you finally felt comfortable enough to talk about what was really important to you, I was like, oh my God. But your lack of confidence or your whatever that is for you, really, it's what is it they say, you're hiding your light under a bushel. I've heard
Bushel
that
basket. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, something like that. Um, that's the other end of that curve, right? They're highly confident, but their social skills are so deeply lacking that you never get to even enjoy that competence. So that's the
Yeah.
other
You
side
don't
of
know
that.
that person really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
they're
actually, yeah.
yeah, go.
Well, actually, part of what comes to mind is Kimberly, your Kimberly, is her whole gig is storytelling, which how she, who she is and how she presents what she presents is fabulous. And it's like, oh, I want to learn more about that. I have actually, just because I was interested in storytelling, I started looking up other storytelling schools, and my purpose was, it's like, oh well, what other resources can I look for here? Because it really struck me, and there were people, it was like, oh my gosh, the way this person is presenting this, it's like, I don't even want to finish reading the rest of what they have to say.
I'm familiar.
Yeah.
I do the same thing. Yeah.
And it was, and it was like, and it actually brought me back to go, okay, well, my deeper dive then is I'm going to do a deeper dive into what I can learn from Kimberly and you around storytelling. I see the same thing with men's groups,
Yeah.
with,
Yeah.
with Man Uncivilized, with Man Talks, with, it's like, and those are two groups that I go, both how this is, what is being presented and how it's being presented really draws me in. There's some other men's groups out there where it's like the ideas aren't that, some of the ideas aren't all that different. But it's like, boy, the way that this is being presented, it's just like, yeah, I don't know if I really want to go there.
I want to maybe try to put some wrap around it because we spend a lot of time on that exact thing. And so bringing it back to brand, we very consciously think of ourselves as a premium brand. And ask ourselves the question a lot. It's a very ongoing conversation. How would a premium brand show up in a given situation? How would a premium brand put on an event? How would a premium brand treat their clients? How would a premium brand approach this type of delicate conversation? How would a premium brand show up in the mail? How would a premium brand appear? We all the time, because and premium to us does not mean expensive. I didn't say luxury brand. That's different, very different. Premium brand is clean. There's no friction. I often will say a premium brand pays attention to the details, right? To the very tiny, the little screw that it takes to finish the building, right? It's all of the details. And so when we think about personal branding, we're looking at all of the touch points you have with the rest of humanity. All is all.
Totally.
So would a premium brand be argumentative? Would a premium brand be an asshole? Would a premium brand come in and suck up all the oxygen in the room? Would a premium brand treat someone in the way I just saw you treat someone? No.
Yeah, not at all.
Never.
Not at all. Exactly.
Never. And those are things that I learned in business that apply perfectly in relationships.
I think you just landed the plane, my friend.
I love talking to you, my buddy.
This was very
good.
fun.
Another good one, huh?
Yeah, this is fun. This is every time we chat, and just for everybody to know, Mark and I chat outside of this Elders Council, and it's pretty much always like this. It's like, what can we dig into? What can we get creative about? So yeah, this is actually.
Well, that's the genesis of the show for those who have come on, maybe they weren't there from the beginning, was you and I, Traver introduced us and we had a conversation like this on a Saturday morning, and I held my hand up and said, "Thank you, sir. May I have another?" And we met the following Saturday, and then the third Saturday, I said, "Would you mind if I recorded? Might I record this?" And so this is just how we are.
Exactly, and I appreciate and love that. Thank you.
I love that too. Have a great rest of your weekend. Bye-bye.